Now, union leaders are set to meet the Health Secretary Steve Barclay today after many said their invites to sit down with the government had been ignored.
Now, it comes as a new NHS winter care package is set to be unveiled by the government to move patients in hospital to care homes. What does it mean for the people in the care homes?
Yes.
So,
well, listen, let's find out what Labour make of all of these plans. We're joined now by a Shadow Minister for Health and Social Care, Andrew Gwynne. Good morning to you. Just taking a look at The Guardian this morning, they seem to have the inside track on what they're calling a hardship fund that's being proposed to try and persuade nurses to call off the strikes, stop asking for higher pay, but they'll get this one-off cash payment. Is something that Labour would support?
Well, look, I think that what the government has to do is it has to meet with the nurses' unions' leadership. They need to properly discuss everything on the table and have that negotiation. Negotiations are just that. The government will have its red lines, the nurses' leaders will have their red lines. There has to be some form of compromise in the middle that both sides can live with, and I hope that we start to see that resolution so that our brilliant nurses can get back to work and our NHS can start working again as it should in this difficult winter.
What would your red lines be? Because I'm interested. Nurses have been asking, haven't they, for 19%. We've been getting hints that they would accept around 10% now if the government would get on board. Rishi Sunak's clearly said he wants to halve inflation by the end of this year, which makes those figures seem even more unaffordable. What does Labour think is fair, reasonable and affordable to pay nurses?
Well, look, we're not part of the negotiations. We're not in government. So I would just urge ministers to do the decent thing, to sit down with the union leaders and to get a resolution to this problem, because we can't go on with the NHS in crisis, with industrial action. We need to resolve this, and nurses need to know that the government's on their side.
yeah, but are they on their side 19% or 10%? I mean, I know you say you're not in government, but let's just imagine. Let's look into a crystal ball, and if you were, and you could be a government in waiting, Andrew, how valued, it's all right saying we go out and we clap for NHS workers and we do all these sort of things, and believe me, as I've found out this year with health problems, you really appreciate them when they're there. But shouldn't we be putting, bottom line, our money where our mouth is on this?
Well, absolutely, and that's the whole purpose of a negotiation. The government knows what's affordable, the unions know what they will work towards. They need to sit down, they need to discuss, they need to resolve this for the sake of the NHS, and absolutely, we need to support the dedicated workers in the NHS. It's great to see you back, Eamon. I've had health problems as well, and I could not sing my praises more for those hard-working, dedicated staff in our NHS, just like you.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm not sure. I mean, we talk about, the care sector and how they can relieve the pressure here. But I look, and the care sector's broken as well. I mean, it hasn't got the attention that it should get as well. Years ago, the Lib Dems used to have this mantra, which was a penny on income tax for the NHS. Do you think it's got to a stage? I mean, I know we were supposed to do that with the national health increase earlier in the year, which didn't come about. But for the care sector, for the NHS sector, one thing's for sure, Andrew, as you're just discussing with me, it comes to us all. There will be a time I look at this and I think to myself, you've got to look after the care sector, because if we live long enough, that's where we're all going to end up. Yeah. Me, you and Andrew. What do you think, Andrew? A penny on the NHS? On tax, sorry?
Well, look, clearly there needs to be more resources. Labour's got its own plan, and that is to scrap the non-dom tax status, whereby people who work in the UK have tax arrangements that means that they can effectively avoid paying tax on most of their income here. We would scrap that, and we would use that for the biggest expansion in NHS workforce, so the doctors, the nurses, the care workers. That's a long-term plan. Obviously, we need to ensure that the NHS is on a sustainable footing, and with that extra investment there has to be reform. We have to make sure that the NHS is fit for the 21st century, and that means looking at how the NHS at all levels operates. primary care is a big issue. We talk about social care and people effectively blocking beds in the NHS because they can't be discharged into social care, and that is an issue. But also people presenting at the front door at A&E because they can't get effective primary care. So we've got to transform the front door, we've got to transform primary care, and the economics of it stack up, Eamon, because, you know, to see a GP it costs around £39 per appointment. To go to an urgent care centre it costs about £79 per appointment. To go to A&E it's £360 per appointment. So obviously the more people that we can pull back from A&E and have appropriate care in the community, in the home setting, at a pharmacy, at a community hub, the better that is for the patient, but ultimately the better that is for the NHS too.
Something Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, was talking about over the weekend, and also how he totally wants to reform general practice by tearing up their independent business model and making them NHS contractors. That's going to set you on a collision course with the BMA. You can guarantee then a Labour government would see more strikes.
Well, that's not our intention. Our intention is to have a conversation, and it's to say, how do we get primary care working in the interests of the patient and also in the interests of the NHS? How do we reform it for the 21st century? We've set out some ideas. We want to have feedback from the BMA, from general practice, as to whether that's workable and how we can achieve the aims of getting our NHS on a sustainable footing and reforming the NHS. So it's not this monolith, but actually it's serving the needs of a modern population, using technology, using innovation and using care at the appropriate setting rather than just focusing on hospitals. That's our aim, that's our ambition, and let's have that dialogue.
Gwynne, some interesting figures from you today. Very, very interesting to see what it costs to do things at certain levels. Appreciate that. So much more we could talk about, but we're out of time. Keep well, that's the main thing, and thank you very much indeed for your views this morning.